Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Today we are going to be covering the four basic forms that you need to learn to be able to draw in order to draw everything else that we see around us. All the general forms that we see anywhere fall into four very specific shapes. So we can start with the triangle that can turn into a cone. And then we're going to go on into the cylinder. And what I've done with the cylinder is I've drawn something called a foreshortened circle at the top. And then at the bottom, create the bottom part of that form. And then of course we have the next one, which is the sphere. And the fourth and last one is the rectangular box. And that rectangular box is rather simple to do as well. All right, so the last assignment that we worked on showed us how to create value gradations and value scales. So one of the important things that you have to understand about creating form is that it requires you have a light source. So in this case, we're going to have a light source somewhere over here. Just simply denote that light source by drawing a little light bulb or sun looking thing on the corner, and that's what we're going to take into consideration where all the shadows are going to be on this drawing that we're making. So if the whenever you're thinking about how to shade something, you want to think about where the light hits and where the light does not hit. So anything that is closest to the light source is going to receive something called a highlight. All right, so right there I've just kind of drawn out some lights and some lines that show me where the brightest area is going to be in the form that we're looking at. So we can start with the cone. Now the cone is a surface that kind of rounds off at the bottom. It has a curve and then it tapers at the top. So in this section right here, if the cone is facing the light, what we're going to do is we're going to start with a shadow on the opposite side of the cone, on the opposite side of the light. And once again, you see me holding the pencil in sideways so that I can do a little bit of blending as I go. I'm scraping the pencil gently over the surface of the paper so that the tooth is what's doing the work for me. And as you can tell, you'll be able to tell that it's doing the work for you by seeing how well it smudges up the outside edges. Okay, and so now what I've done here is create it like a shaded area for this. And I want to remember that underneath the cone there's a little bit of shadow like that. We'll deal with the shadow of the cone later, but we want to get that edge shadow. And as it works its way closer to the light source, it's going to get lighter and lighter. So this is where you apply the gradation scale. So once you know how to do a gradation scale, you can apply all these, you can create the transition from dark to light in a smooth surface, just like I'm doing right here. Okay, notice I'm moving round and round in circles. Okay, and that pretty much kind of takes care of the cone. What I'm going to do next is the cylinder. And the cylinder has pretty much like the cone. It's getting light source here. And so this is going to be the brightest area. And this area back here, opposite from the light source, is going to be the darkest. So I'm going to start by shading gently, gently. Now, I'm also not necessarily moving in circles all the time. And you can tell when I don't move in circles because it leaves a pencil stroke. And we don't want that. We don't want a pencil stroke in there. We want to keep a nice smooth surface that can be blended and won't look like it's very rough. So what happens with a cylinder is that as the cylinder progresses closer and closer to the light, there's more and more light that hits that part of the cylinder, and we get a shadow way opposite of the cylinder, of the light source on the cylinder. So that should be your darkest area in your cylinder, the area that is furthest away from the light source. All right. And in this case, this cylinder, we're going to assume, or we're going to think that this cylinder has a solid top, and we are going to just leave that top white. Now, notice what happened right here. I've got some pencil strokes. I'm going to come back in with the my blender, my jet airplane blender. I'm going to soften this up a little bit, see if I can get rid of some of those areas. Just kind of darken this right there. And come back in here and just kind of get those dark shaded areas a little bit better so we can develop a form, make it look 3D when it's really just on a flat surface. Now I'm getting a little sloppy here, so I got to come back in, and I'm blending it with the pencil, with the wood on the pencil, and adding some more graphite on here. So you can tell blender is working because it smudged up the area there. All right, how's that? Okay, so that's the cylinder. The next thing I'm going to do is the sphere. Now, the sphere is an interesting one because what happens is that the sphere does that transition or curved shape or direction on the contour, but in 360 degrees. So it's you want to think about the sphere and shading it like kind of like a moon or half moon or a crescent moon. So first you start with the area that's shaded on the outside, or the shadow furthest away from the light source, and then you start working your way into the center. And notice how I'm moving my pencil in a circle, but now I'm just leaving like this highlight area that I'm not even touching, and that is the area closest to the light source. Then it's just a matter of making sure that the furthest edge of the sphere, or the circle that I'm filling in, has a shadow. There you go, just like that, nice and smooth. And then maybe down here at the bottom, a little bit of the shadow here at the bottom. We're going to come back in and add shadows on all these pieces once I get the shading done. All these forms will have shadows that touch it, make the forms look like they're grounded, right? And that'll give the illusion of form, three-dimensional form. Now I'm not completely finished with these. I'm going through them as fast as I can so I can make sure that I come back and then add the details. Which brings us to the cube, or the box. Now the box is the three-dimensional form where we're going to apply the value scale. Now remember, the value gradation is what we apply on the cone, the sphere, and the sphere and the cylinder. What we do here with the box is we apply the value scale, and so we're going to have even values, even tones. This area that gets the light source is going to stay white. We're not going to touch it. The only area it's going to get shadow on is any shadow that it gets from the sphere that's standing right next to it. Now this spot right here that is directly opposite of the sunlight or the light source, we're going to add a nice even kind of, I'm going to do a dark shadow. Now in this case, I'm not moving my pencil in circles, but I am just gently skimming the surface so that the paper, the tooth of the paper, is what's picking up the lead, and I can come back and smooth that out with my jet blender so that I can get all nice even coverage. See, what I want to do is I want to get the tone of this side to be kind of like the darkest value of the whole area because this is the spot that doesn't get any shadow. Okay, so that's pretty close to the shaded area. And now what we're going to do is, this could be an open box, so I'm just going to make that wall down there. That's what it comes, something like that, yeah. Okay, so if this was an open box, then this part right here is not going to get any light source, so I'm going to come back in here and shade it as well. There we go. And because it gets dark in there at the bottom, what I'm going to do is I'm going to create kind of like a value gradation from the inside of the box to the outside edge of the box, so it feels like it's going in there. Okay, I'm going to do a little bit of the same for this side right here. And I'm going to keep it a light value because some of this is facing the light source, and I'm also going to give it the illusion that it's deeper in there down near the bottom by adding a more shaded area at the bottom. And I think at that point, all I got to do now is just make sure that it's all smoothed out. Nice smooth area. And there we have our 3 basic forms shaded. Now, in order to create the shadows, what we got to do is we got to imagine where the light source is going to point the shadow. So usually a direct line from the light source will help you develop where the shadow is going to go. Okay, and if the light source is intense, then what will happen is that you'll get intense shadows. So here I'm going to draw the shadow of the cone on the surface of my my cylinder, and if you can tell what's happening is that I'm picking up some surface texture from the table that I'm shading on, so I need to just work with that a little bit. Usually also when you draw shadows, the bottom portion of the shadow where it touches, where the shadow touches the ground, is going to be slightly darker. Notice that my pencil is helping me blend, but I also gotta add a little bit of lead there. It's being a little ornery here. And just a little bit of blending will help. And that's a good start. Come back in and darken in some areas near the beginning of the shadow, make it look more believable, and it's good to go. Especially right here. Bottom parts of all the forms you should make sure that you come back in and just make sure that they're grounded. It's not a lot of a shadow, but it's just enough to imply that they're connected to the ground, and that your mind's eye fills in the rest. And there you go. Those are the 4 basic forms, shaded and drawn and shaded for your example. Till next time.